Oh, there. Stuart is the chair of the committee that produced the Australian Earth Observation Community Plan 2026. Did I get that right? I'm not doing well with dates today. He is also a professor of geography at the University of Queensland, where he teaches remote sensing. And I believe you've had 36 PhD students. Is that right? Mm-hmm. That's a lot of PhDs. It's almost as many as in the room today. His research and teaching interests are using airborne and satellite data sets for measuring and monitoring environmental changes, and a growing part of this work now focuses on national coordination of Earth observation activities and the collection, publishing and sharing of ecosystem data. Please welcome Stuart.
Okay, thanks very much, Chris. So today I'm going to be presenting some material on behalf of the group of industries, governments, and the broader community that uses a lot of the data sets and information that you've seen presented earlier today. Just before I get to the title, I've got a question just to keep you guys awake and focused for a bit, and all the other students in the room. How many satellites does Australia actually have in space? Wow, okay, quick, let's go. Yep. No, okay. The answer's pretty easy. Another one? No. Yep. Getting close. Closer? Correct. I'll come back to this point in a minute. The point of my talk isn't for Australia just to launch one satellite. It's a bit bigger than that. Monsieur Brunet's talk and also Steve Jacoby's talks highlighted why we need to get more engaged as a country in contributing to Earth observation globally. So I'm going to talk about a plan that we've got to work together now and in the future so we can access and use that information, and also to help it provide information and services so we can move forward as a society in the future. Okay, three main messages from the talk today. The first one, I think you've got a lot of already. Our economy, our governments, our use of technology and society is wholly dependent on information and services that we get from satellite imagery, number one. One of the common themes you've seen in a number of the talks today is that there is a large amount of technological change in terms of access to different data sets. Our ability to access information and imagery, like through our mobile phones and other devices, has increased extremely rapidly as well. There's a lot of global change going on. Australia's not doing the best job it could in contributing to that space and being able to use it down the track. And a lot of us would argue, we're doing a pretty poor job in some areas. Aside from what Steve Jacoby just presented, there are a lot of areas we could grow this, particularly in industry. So we've now got a really big opportunity to help build a bigger and better approach to link into and support initiatives like the European Commission's initiative, and also to grow our industry and our government applications in that area. So the plan, which we're just going to release today, which is copies of it outside, is a way to help us work more effectively together. And one of the real reasons for doing that plan is to give back to the international community. For over 30 or 40 years, we've used billions of dollars of foreign taxpayer-funded resources to support our activities. We've given back in bits and pieces in science and other areas, but we can do a lot better, a hugely lot better. And we can also help build more opportunities for current industries and also for where everyone's going in the future. Okay, so what do we mean by Earth observation? You've seen bits and pieces. So when we talk about Earth observation in our plan, it's the satellites, it's also the airborne imagery capture systems, it's the drone-based systems, it's the people on the ground, it's the infrastructure for collecting that data. It's also where we store the data, where we reprocess it and make it available in different forms for people to use. Some of that's government provided, some of it's research, and a large part of it now is coming through private companies like Amazon and Google. It's also about delivering the data and information and products in forms that we can use it. So this plan isn't just about satellites, it's about all of these things and building capacity across Australia. These are a range of applications for Earth observation. Again, I think that the video that Michel Brunet showed at the end of his talk was a really good integrator of what you can use this data for. So there's a lot of different applications. Let's look at some of those a bit more closely. Data that comes from satellite imagery. This is from Japan's Himawari satellite, imaging roughly every 10 minutes. It's a picture, but it's actually a quantitative measurement of the temperature of the clouds and the surface of the Earth. We can work out how high the clouds are, how thick they are. If you capture that image every couple of minutes, you can look at what the winds are doing at different levels in the atmosphere. Those data are critical for building products like this. We see it all the time. There are multiple forms of satellite imagery that go into those forecasts and then get communicated. In Queensland, we get a lot of cyclones. Our ability to forecast where those are going and produce detailed risk maps, hazard maps, deal with them, again, depends on multiple forms of satellite imagery. Getting a little bit closer to what happens on the ground, mapping where vegetation is, how much vegetation is there for doing national and international reporting is again done from satellite imagery and ground data. Our oceans, we've got a very large oceanic resource to look at, looking at sea surface temperature, ocean waves, all of those things comes from satellite imagery. In Queensland, and Steve showed you some of this in his talk, monitoring vegetation in terms of where it is, how much it's cleared over time for a range of activities comes from satellite imagery. Our food production systems with agriculture and horticulture, monitoring the condition of those so farmers can use them to make decisions about where they do and don't fertilise, how much is being produced, again, satellite imagery. Getting a little bit closer, so here we are in Brisbane. Hopefully this nervousness tester works. As the university, we're sitting over here in South Bank. Local governments, local councils, companies use this scale of information to look at what's actually on the ground, whether you're looking at producing more detailed flood maps of the surface energy balance, looking for certain developments. Measurements of three-dimensional form as well is critical. It's also critical for looking at where it's actually likely to flood in an area as well, and there's a predicted flood within the area of Brisbane. Getting down even further, aerial surveys, drone-based surveys. A number of our power companies across the state need to know where their power lines are and how much vegetation is growing across them. And this is a development where a company goes across the state, flies these areas, works out where the trees are overlapping the power lines, and literally saves a very large amount of money directing people to go and trim those areas. Okay, so why are we doing the plan? Because things are changing in terms of data collection. 4 or 5 years ago, this is how we really dealt with collecting Earth observation data. A number of different satellite image data sources, airborne data and ground data, people processing those data and turning them into products at their computer. This is a situation we're working into now, which is growing. We've got a very large number of different satellite imagery data sets, airborne imagery, a rapidly growing drone-based data collection and delivery service, and still ground-based services. We've got multiple ground receiving stations. We've now got data sets and processing capability in the cloud, and we've got people processing those, and we access these products and services through our mobile devices and phones. Our industry and our government is playing catch up in this space, and we need a lot of development to build capacity in this area to help go from here to this area and also support what goes on here. So just some examples of some of those changes. This is imagery from Karen Joyce, James Cook University. She's looking at drone-based systems for mapping various areas around Queensland. She's also started a program basically for girls in terms of learning to fly drones and acquire information and the science and technology behind that. This is another example of this sort of technology in use. This is the NRM Spatial Hub webpage, but what it shows you is a front end to a website where you can go in and look at satellite imagery that's collected all the time. It's turned into information about the condition of the ground that's relevant to landholders and farmers. They can look at their properties and then they can pick areas and look at its change over time to see the effect of their management practices and to see what's happening in terms of rainfall and other things. That's accessing data from a range of satellite systems. You know, the farmers don't have all the imagery and all the processing, they're just getting the service at the end of the day. So we've got to build systems to help use that more effectively. Australia has spent a lot of time trying to figure out what's happening in space and how do we engage with it. This is a slide courtesy of Stephen Ward at Symbios, which shows the range of things our government's done to try and understand Earth observation and build different activities to support it. And we haven't quite got our act together. Politics has gotten in the road at some point. But we're now at a point where we have to move forward. I don't think we have a choice, and industry and government knows that as well. That's why we're developing this plan. The plan that we've got sets out these ideal components for building this capacity to collect and use Earth observation data more effectively, and also to contribute more, I think, effectively as a global, fair player in this space. So the plan sets out roles for government, private industry and research and education for working more effectively in these areas. And we developed the plan based on input from all of these sectors across Australia. It's a starting point for moving forward, but it's going to take us to a point we need to be in a number of years. There's 5 priorities in the plan. I won't go through them in detail. The first one is connecting and coordinating all of our communities internally more effectively across industry, government and research. The second one is making sure that we continue to build those roles into the international community and bodies like the Committee on Earth Observation Satellites, which has just met here all week, and other critical international programs. The third one is making sure we build the infrastructure and people we need, to grow and support this area. And that's the next generation of people working in this area, which is the students and other people who are here today. The fourth one is making sure we've got access to the data and programs we need to. Again, the Copernicus program's a good example of that. You're going to hear from Frank Kelly from USGS in a minute. Making sure we maintain access to those things is critical. And then the last one is making sure that there's engagement all the way through the people using these data sets and services all the time. So the vision was encapsulated again by that video that we just saw coming out of the Copernicus program. By 2026, we want to make sure we're delivering high quality Earth observation information, infrastructure and services that are widely used in Australia and internationally. Before I finish, I want to acknowledge the fact that this is done by the Earth observation community across Australia. I want to acknowledge Dr. Beck Christensen for helping to put this together, and also specifically Jonathan Ross at Geoscience Australia, who's really helped push this along and make it happen. So I'll finish there. There's the website. There's copies of it outside, and I look forward to working with everyone about this in future. Thanks for your attention.